Welcome one and all to the penultimate week of BUSR Winter F1 action, and we are live with our final sprint race week of the year here in Qatar. My name is IW Dragon, joined by Jason on the commentary desk. Are you excited for a bit of racing around this Qatar circuit?
Well, I didn't know it was going to be a sprint, so that adds a bit more to it, doesn't it? And as it is in real life as well, so that's going to be quite interesting as a comparison.
Yeah, quite a few weeks that have corresponded with races in real life as well. So I think Brazil was a week that we had in tandem with the actual F1 race weekend, and we have the same here in Qatar, and both are sprint races. So it is going to be an interesting time for all these guys. They've had probably a watch of what is going on the actual circuit this weekend. Let's see if some of these guys can take a few of those lines around the circuit today. Qatar itself, it's an interesting circuit. We're looking at a high degradation, I believe, on the tires. It is quite demanding on one side, the left-hand side of the car in terms of the turns. So we're going to be looking at quite a few differing tire strategies across all the drivers today. But of course, this sprint race is going to be most likely mediums for everyone on the grid, I'd say. But everyone still has qualifying to survive first before you get to that point.
Yeah, mediums sound good. The hards, from what I remember about the F1 game, tend to not exactly be that useful, if I'm right in saying. And the softs are probably just going to die within about 3 laps. So good luck to them. I'm glad I'm up here.
Here in the commentary box, it's much nicer. I would be honest, I did a few laps of Qatar before this, and actually it turns out I'm all right at Qatar in comparison to the rest of the circuits. Every single time I've been on commentary, I've tried the circuit beforehand, been absolutely awful. Qatar, I felt not bad on, so I think we might be seeing some quite good times, I would hope, from everyone else. If they can beat a 125.3, I think, then they're definitely better than me. So I'm expecting all of the drivers today to be beating that time. Otherwise, I might be putting the gloves on for the finale and seeing what I can do there and see if I can beat everyone around Suzuka. But two people I don't think I'll be beating today on the grid is Cameron and Joe, the two drivers at the top of the leaderboard. And as we have reached the penultimate week, Cameron has used his drop round. Joe hasn't, or, well, he is using it, but it's on a second place finish, one of his many this season. But we've gotten to the situation where all that Joe needs in this week is for Cameron to not finish the main Grand Prix, I believe. In terms of the sprint race, as long as he finishes next to Cameron, if Cameron has a sudden crash or a puncture during this race that takes him out of contention for any points, we could be looking at a champion crown today. But it is not likely considering Cameron's form this season.
Well, in the case of Joe, it's just sort of don't bottle it like he has in a few of the previous seasons. I'm allowed to say that because I did go to the same uni as him. So I was looking over some of his results in the past, and he's come runner-up, third, fourth around that for quite a while. Let's just put it that way.
Well, it seems that this season it has come down to the early race results. I mean, Cameron, when I was first on the desk this season around Zandvoort, he had a mysterious crash out into the wall during a safety car. And then a few weeks later in Miami, there was an awful AI decision to take him into the pit lane during the final few laps of the race. Put him on soft tires, so he managed to get up to 6th place. But it seems like the DNF being used as a drop round and that 6th place finish seems to almost have been a killer for his season. That's if Joe doesn't bottle. So if you are right in what you are saying, and Joe has a habit of chucking things out the window during the last few points of the season, it might be a rough one today, but we still got Suzuka next week to top off the rest of the season. This week, it's important that Joe manages to finish highly. He doesn't use that drop week. So essentially, he puts all the pressure on Cameron to keep performing in these last two.
Yeah, well, not trying to talk about it too much because it's commentator's curse and all that, but he is coming into this with a distinct advantage. Having dropped to 2nd place, it sort of effectively means that even if he DNFs this one, it's sort of just, you still got 2nd in terms of real points, and that's still going to be sort of good enough to get him into the last round, wherever that may be. Suzuka, as you said, in a good position. So I don't know. I'd be feeling good if I was him.
It is a good 16-point gap, but it's not quite an insurmountable lead, I believe. If we take a look at the points system, it is an 8-point difference in terms of first versus second. So if Cameron takes first in both these races, this one here in Qatar, the main race, and we take a look at Suzuka next week, if Cameron wins both of those, it could be decided by the sprint race coming up, which puts a lot of pressure on both these drivers. As we are starting to look towards qualifying soon, we have about a minute before everything gets underway. So this first qualifying here, before the sprint race decides the layout of the grid, I think this is mightily important that Joe puts a stamp of authority against Cameron and takes P1 in qualifying.
I mean, that would be ideal. I've not actually seen either of them do laps of the track, so to be fair, I've got no idea what's about to happen. For all we know, Cameron Searle might not like this track, although he seems to like every track. So who knows? As we are now into qualifying, who's going to be the first out? What's the bets on that one?
Well, first out, you don't really you have a free road in front of you, so just depends who's going to take the initiative here.
Who can load their setup the quickest?
Go on, get in the Steam Workshop, find the setup, get going.
Right. What have we got? It's an Aston Martin.
Aston Martin is chaotic.
Or chaotic.
Chaotic. I say chaotic. I don't care about the names.
Either way.
I just chaotic makes more sense in my head, so I've just run with it this entire year.
You get called what I call you.
That's the sake of casters. That's a good thing that you get to do. You get to give people accidental nicknames by misreading. I'm not misreading. Yeah. I'm just reading it how I want to.
Well, we did that previously in the BUSR. We had someone 7734, and we thought, no, we're not going to do that. We're just going to call them numbers. So now that's numbers.
I tell you what, that's good. I like that.
Exactly. I mean, the nickname ended up fading away in favour of using real name, but it was there. It stuck around for a good few years.
So it looks like we have Reese Hands leading the way in terms of track position. Wasn't the first out. That does go to Chaotic. You got out of the pits first, but it seems like someone is desperate to start a first lap with at least a little bit of clean air in front, not have to worry about anyone else. So I'll tell you what, for this first lap of the session, let's follow along Reese Hands throughout this lap, immediately opening up DRS into the hot lap, going down into turn 1, corner where George Russell and Lewis Hamilton had a massive crash in previous year's Qatar Grand Prix. Going through these S's. I like this first section myself, personally. It's quite fun to get through. It's Reese Hands. Round that top end corner, round the second one. Down in towards the next set of corners. Heading up towards turn number 7. Through there, kiss of the apex. Moving out to the outside part of the track. Again, hitting the apexes here, Reese Hands. It's going to be all about how much traction he gets out of these corners. Keeping control of this car through this first out lap, first setting time of today. Into the last sector, into the last couple of corners. Full out into this last section, dropping down to 4th gear, on towards the start-finish line. What time will be the first one set today? It will definitely beat my time. 1 minute 21 to start things off from Reese Hands in this qualifying. Looking towards sprint. It's Chaotic, the first one out, ending up a 10th behind.
Yeah, it's my favourite thing about going out first is you are guaranteed to be on pole. Only for a little bit, as Ender Epic and then Mad Dog set their own times. Mad Dog setting it seems like a pretty decent benchmark, 4/10 above Ender, and I mean your 125 is just it's a little bit off. We'll see where it would be at the end of the session.
I'm reckoning 16th if I'm being completely honest. The rest of these times coming in.
You never know what Ed's got in his locker, or what Ed doesn't have in his locker.
I reckon it'll be enough. Poor guy. getting compared to me. Here comes Joe to cross the line next, the championship leader crossing the line, and of course 1 minute 19.9 ahead of Mad Dog by about 6/10 there. And Cameron unable to meet that 1 minute 20.1. He's in P2, the championship runner-up at the moment in P2 with 30 minutes left of the session, usually about 2 more laps for everyone around this track. Be a new rubber, refill and fuel, and go again for another set of runs.
Yeah, it's a shame that you have to be so marginal and go in for new tyres, new fuel. But I like GT qualifying where you can just continue going round. But yeah, there you go. You wouldn't be lost so far.
There you go, lovely. Thank you, Jacans. Appreciate that, man.
Although I'm going to assume there's probably going to be a bit of improvement there at some point.
I reckon a good 10 seconds at least to take down that time. We do still have Dasher on an outlap. We'll be starting up next, so why don't we follow Dasher around the track? Another name that is actually familiar with myself, someone who was part of the University Rocket League side of things, of course moving on to F1, I believe making a name for himself, and also getting mad in chat every time I made a slight mistake, thinking there was rain coming along after being told when there wasn't. So I appreciate that, Dasher. He's heading up towards turn number 3 and number 4, well, 4 and 5, I should say. Heading around turn 6, that is a purple first sector from Dasher to start off his first hot lap around this Qatar circuit, rounding turn 7 through this 8-9 complex down to 10. Now, we will be watching this second sector. Will it also be turning purple? Will Joe be sweating a little bit after these first set of laps, as Dasher does not set off the purple lights in that second sector, but could remain top of the timing sheets with the first sector just ahead of Joe. Rounding the final few corners, heading towards turn 16, turning the corner, go flat out from here, opening DRS, getting down to the start-finish line. How good is this lap? It will be a 120.3. It was a good first sector. It seems like the second two might have let him down. Maybe a bit of a race setup to give a little bit more consistency across this, but just 0.2 behind. Dasher will go P3.
Yeah, not got too far to improve, although obviously those last few tenths are much more difficult to find as opposed to if you're, for example, in the 130s and having to set a new lap as Jackans did. I feel like there's probably an easier way to say that name. Probably just Jake.
I mean, as a caster, there are sometimes you look for the easiest way of choosing things, as Cameron Searle tops the timing sheets. That is also, Cameron, very easy name. Very clear, very understandable, very common. But Jacans, just say what's there in front of you. I mean, he has the numbers at the end, so...
I've looked it up. It's Jake. It's Jake Ansel.
He's going to be Jacans for me. Jacans forever.
currently in the Discord, JK, I am slow. Is his nickname at the moment?
Well, he's not as slow as me anymore. He has updated his time 121.4 that sits in P10. As I think a lot of people might be bailing on their second laps, realizing they're not an improvement, but another little sort of bit of data for them as they move back into the pit lane. Let's see, who do we have yet to set a time? Dorsey, Rage, Last Gen U having a very good season. Ender Epic also. I think this entire season, when we've been on desk, we sort of upped bigged up a few of these newer drivers onto the grid, like Last Gen Newt and Ender Epic, who've come to their rookie season. And they're setting a good benchmark for themselves for the next split coming up. I mean, Ender Epic getting onto the podium last week, I believe, around Yas Marina. So, very good first podium in BUSR. The only question is, with 2 more races, will there be another one, and perhaps maybe even a victory in his locker in the rest of the season?
We'll just have to see how much chaos there may be in this championship fight. As I know firsthand that there can be quite a lot of chaos in championship battles. I'm sorry, Geek. Yeah, I may have done some bad things in the past that's affected a certain championship battle, but we'll move across that. But yeah, I'd love to see people coming in and just immediately challenging for these podiums, challenging top 5s. It's great to see, and it ultimately makes it more enjoyable, keeps people back, which is kind of what we want at the moment.
Last Gen Newt putting in a good first time in this first hot lap around the Qatar circuit. Last Gen Newt to cross the line, 1 minute 20.7 up to P5 on the timing sheets. Arguably only 1 lap left for him in terms of qualifying if he's quick around getting back into the pits. And Repic improving as well, taking... oh wait, no, he's invalid lap. It was looking like a good time, but I just checked the timing sheet on the side. Nothing improved. So that is gonna have to move back to the pit lane, get a fresh set of tyres, prepare for the last one.
The bloody FIA getting in the way. Who needs track limits? I mean, look at how much there is to use outside of the white lines.
So much room for activities. Come on.
Yeah, we paid for the whole track. We want to use it. Somehow Geek has left the session despite not being in it.
He's had enough. He's had enough of the FIA already. he wants to use the whole track. He's upset that he can't. I mean, he also can't because he was a spectator, but that's a different reason.
I don't worry about that. Well, he's a safety car driver. He's not needed in qualifying.
Tell you what's been great about this season is I've been let in on a lot of bits of BUSR lore throughout the season of just hanging out with people, getting to know people. First time casting F1 throughout this season. I hope I've improved. Hope I've entertained everyone watching the streams as Rage comes through the last corner. We're looking to set his first time of today. Looking to be in the 120s as he crosses the line. 122.9. We'll stay at the bottom of the timing sheet. We'll be quickly round to the pits. New tyres. Get out for another hot lap. But yes, it's been interesting. And now I've had another lore drop of you getting in the way of a championship fight. I'll have to hear about that later. A little bit more.
Oh, yeah, it's quite funny. Ask Geek. I'm sure he's happy to happy to talk about it. No, it was only in race 1, but yeah.
He might be stepping out of his safety car and just running up to the commentary box right now. Now he's known in here. Oh, goodness. But, as we look towards the last set of laps for everyone, Joe still in the pits. Cameron looking to try and solidify this P1 position going into the sprint race with one more out lap and one more hot lap to go through. Do have 4 minutes left of the session, but I think anyone from here is going to be tight towards getting your lap done, getting back in, and then, of course, getting past the start-finish line to begin a new lap. So I think a lot of people will be waiting in the pit lane just to wait and see what happens for a few of these drivers. So let's continue to follow Cameron around the circuit. Let's see if he can improve and really put the pressure on Joe to try and catch him up for qualifying for the sprint race which, of course, in this version of the game, will sort out the grid for the final race, an overall main race today. Going through this complex of corners, taking a little bit of time off his current best in this session. Taking a corner into the 8-9 complex at the top of the circuit in the middle of Sector 2. Going around turn 10, up towards the end of sector line, and up towards turn 12. Another purple, another 10th off his time. This is a commanding lap from the championship runner-up, currently P2 overall, just a 16-point gap heading into these final 2 Grand Prix with the sprint race at the start of this evening. Cameron around the final corner. This could be a great benchmark for Joe to have to beat. Going across the line, Cameron saying a 1:19.6, 0.2 overall across the lap, and only 3 1,000ths of that was in the first sector.
Has anyone got the overall time trial leaderboards handy?
I fortunately don't. Usually I check that as well, but that
could be a new addition.
That is a good 6 seconds in front of what I can do, which, to be fair, is not saying much. I mean, currently Rage in P15 is still 4 seconds ahead of me in terms of overall lap time across quali, so I think it's not much in terms of a good sign for him that you're beating someone who plays the game every few weeks, sort of see what tracks are like, but still.
Well, I play the game never, so you're probably better than I am. I don't even know if I own F123, actually. Definitely don't own 24.
I think I've got both, but then I realised didn't need 24, which is just 23, which I already had. I'm going to have to dip into 24 during next season, next year. See what I can do with that. Spend a little bit more time racing, see if I can improve my skills. Ender Epic, 4/10, up to P4, joining his Ferrari teammate on the second row of the grid, as it seems like that will be his last lap of today. Quite a few people on their hot laps will cross the line. This will be their last time of the day. Definitely not getting to the start-finish line with about 40 seconds to go. Finn will be starting his last lap. Jacan's taking 2/10 off.
Of red.
It's just a glitch in the game, don't worry. I was thrown off by that during my first week, thinking something had gone wrong. Jacan's having a good middle sector, but unfortunately slow around the rest of the lap, so will not be dropping that time down even further. As we approach the end of qualifying, still a few more times to come in. Joe has timed that excellently with 5 seconds remaining. He'll be the last one to go. So let's take a look at Joe, who'll be needing to take about 4/10 off his time. That tank slapper going to that corner will not be helping him out. Heading up towards 4 and 5. Going around the corners. Down towards turn 6. Rage saying another time. Is going across the line. Does that get quicker? Just
invalid.
Oh, invalid. I want to watch Joe.
Very easy to do around here. Dasher looks valid. See what it's going to be as he's running up to the line. Where is it? It's not. Well, it's an improvement in time, but not in position.
Just see Mad Dog and Last Gen Newt getting in between the two Ferraris on the starting grid for the sprint. Finn improving time, but unfortunately not position. Dorsey, I think, just didn't have the time, nor did James. I think the last few drivers arriving at the start-finish line have not had the laps that they want, as Joe invalidates, has to move back into the pit lane. Chicans will cross the finish line. It is only Mad Dog left on the track before we finish. He goes into the pit lane. That will be it for qualifying. Cameron Searle taking P1, 119.6. Joe just behind in P2, and Dasher in P3, and that rounds off the top 3 in qualifying.
Well, it's terrible, but when we went on board with Mad Dog at the end there, I thought the kick on the red, I thought that just looked wrong. Why does the green look right to me now?
I think we're being gaslit for an entire season to make it think.
We have.
It's
horrible.
I'm gonna be real. I didn't think it was that bad. I don't think it was that bad for this entire season. The fluoro green had already gaslit me by the time the car was revealed, so I didn't think it was too bad. But here we are.
I prefer the red.
I'll be honest, I prefer it as well, but I didn't have quite a visceral reaction in comparison to everyone else when I saw the green. That is qualifying. First reactions to that, Jason. I mean, our championship runner-up in P1, championship leader in P2. It's looking good for both of them heading into the sprint qualifying.
Yeah, realistically, it's about where both of them would want to be. I mean, obviously, each of them would want the other one to be much, much further down. But in terms of Joe, all he's got to do is sort of stay around where Cameron Searle is, and what Cameron's got to do is stay in front of Joe wherever Joe may be. So that's pretty much all both of them have to do.
Our position in favour of Cameron. So that is 0.1 for this evening, going towards Cameron. He's done his job in terms of this qualifying. But it looks like we'll be going straight into sprint as soon as everyone has loaded back in. So no rest for any of these drivers in terms of going around this circuit. They will have 10 more laps. And as we said during the build-up, prediction is from both sides it's going to be mediums, mostly because of how much this track will just eat up softs. I don't think they'll be lasting around this circuit. I think it is going to end up being a medium sprint, essentially qualifying for the next 10 laps.
Yeah, in terms of tyre wear for the game, I'm assuming 50% would be the same tyre wear on the sprint as well then. So double tyre wear type thing.
I think so. It's been a weak point that I haven't quite learned yet in terms of
it would definitely
the game in terms of tyre wear. I definitely know it is increased in terms of these short races to make it at least somewhat parallel to a 100% race. But I think mediums is the best call. I mean, both of us might be surprised if we see some softs out on track. We might also just end up being completely proven wrong by all the drivers sort of arriving with softs and going, "What the heck are the commentary box talking about?" We know that the best tires for this short distance race is going to be the softs. That's why they're talking about mediums. We've still looked ahead.
We've got some professional advice from one of our ROs, Josh. Tyre wear very bad here, and fuel. So yeah, a lot of fuel burn, obviously, because you're basically flat out for a decent chunk of the lap. And tyre wear because they're all high and medium speed corners, mainly because of bike track.
I should watch some of the MotoGP stuff around the Qatar circuit, see how it compares. But here we go. We start the formation lap around.
Oh, wow.
There you go.
As predicted.
Wow, we did it. Medium tyres all around.
Congrats, guys. You are all better than the real-life Kick Sauber strategy team. And that's all I'm going to say about the real one.
There we go. We'll take a look around the track. Cameron leading the way around the circuit in terms of this formation lap. Get the tyres warmed up nice and quick. Of course, not under control. This is the cinematic build-up, so all these drivers will sort of have readily warmed tyres as if they had taken the formation lap around the circuit. So the Qatar Grand Prix for BUSR Winter 2024 starts with this sprint race, and a lot of the championship could be decided here. 0 stop, just the mediums, 3 red lights, 4, 5, and it's lights out here in Qatar for the sprint race around this circuit. And immediately, that's a big move going from Dorsey, going around the outside of Cameron to turn 1. That's outstanding, keeping the tyre. And a big spin in the centre. Last gen Newt spun. That is a huge amount of debris on the circuit. It should be a safety car. I think we've got the virtual coming out at least. And Dorsey, there we go. I think that explains, unfortunately, the massive move at the start. A jump start. All the praise I gave him out the window. Immediately. So he'll be having to take that drive-through penalty some point during this 10 laps. Cameron will sort of be looking in front thinking, how did that happen? Oh, that makes sense. As Dorsey will try and drive away into the sunset under this virtual safety car, up 9 places with the jump start. That's incredible. But the real losers of that last gen New, it's James Chaotic losing 8 places, I believe. 3 places and 7 off that massive incident going into turn 1.
And we're green again. Yeah, unfortunately, I saw that jump start immediately, but I didn't have the heart to tell you, as Cameron Searle and Joe are as close as they were before the virtual safety car came out. See if Joe can do anything before DRS. I think the answer is probably going to be no, because I've told that ERS runs out very, very quickly around this track. So worth saving, but he is getting up really close to the back and going for the move down into turn 1, making it stick pretty much immediately. So we'll see if he can hold on to that one.
That might be a good trading spot for both these drivers going around this circuit as Joe moves out towards the inside and moves back across towards the racing line. Cameron's still about 1.5 tenths around Joe, keeping very humble going around the Qatar circuit. Will need to do so. Sprint race, of course, as I said, in the gap in between the qualifying and this race, and during qualifying as well, this will sort out the grid positions for everyone as well. And after the start, it has to be noted as well, Ender Epic getting up to P3 above Dasher on the start as well. I think I was too distracted by Dorsey's seemingly immense move going around, and it looks like we do have the car stopped on circuit. I think someone has spun around Dorsey after what could have been a thunderous start. If it wasn't seen by the race officials, it would have been a great start up into P1, but unfortunately after the spin and a pit stop down in P12.
Yeah, and perhaps we're going to be swapping again here as Cameron now is down the inside of turn 1. Is that going to be quite as easy? No, Joe's able to hold that one around the outside, so he's been practicing that. And Aston Martin on a different car this time. It's Chaotic on Rage going into turn 1. But that lead battle is going to be quite interesting to see whether they keep duking it out into turn 1 or whether they just decide to hold off to try and get away from the rest of the pack a little bit, because they've got a bit of a train still behind them.
I think it might be a train for the rest of the laps here in the sprint race. There's not really sort of enough time for these drivers to really generate a lead. It looks like there's an incident in the middle of the track just for a moment there that last gen Newt managed to get through. And it's still Cameron, Joe, Ender Epic now in P3, Dasher in P4, Reese Hands in P5, Alpha, Mad Dog, Jacans, and Last Gen Newt. Last Gen Newt taken out in that crash in turn 1. Good recovery drive to move up into P9 and is sitting on the back of Jacans. Of course, I think that all the focus of all the drivers is going to be on this race at front as Cameron Searle moving down the inside. I think Joe will just leave it. He knows this sort of like a trading position part of the track down that home straight. Plenty of slipstream, DRS as well. Yeah, you're not really competing with that in terms of this point of the race. You just have to stay with him, keep him humble, and make sure you overtake him at the right point in this race and keep that lead.
Yeah, I think if I was in his position, I'd just sort of be counting ahead in the laps. He's going to be ahead into 5, into 7, into 9. Is that going to be correct? Who knows? But, well, it's easy enough to work out, but I'm not going to do it. But no, it seems into turn 1 that it pretty much inside, outside sort of doesn't really matter so long as you're the car that is ahead. Going into the turning point, you're probably going to be all right. So that could be our sort of marker to see what's going to happen as going from bad to worse for the 12th place Mercedes. It looks like another spin.
Yeah, Dorsey, it's not quite getting a grip on this circuit as we look back at P1, P2 at the moment. Joe, it's interesting. You can't make the overtake before you reach the start-finish line as Joe trying to go around the outside will be blocked out by Cameron. You move on to lap 5. It seems to be sort of a 2-lap deal of getting back to the gearbox of the car in front. Then you're able to make the move once more. They have, by doing this, they have managed to bring out a 1-second lap to Ender Epic in P3. So these two are starting to get a little bit of padding between themselves and the rest of the train that is starting to build down to P6 with Dasher Reeshands and Alpha following each other behind. But it's still the battle up front that could be a decider in this championship. I've realized my maths was slightly wrong. I believe it has to be Joe getting second place in both these final races and fastest lap to generate that 8-point difference between these drivers. So not quite safe yet in this championship, and not quite safe for Cameron to just run away with these last 2 wins as we get to the final corner of lap 5. Joe will be hoping to line up a move here going into turn 1. We'll be in the slipstream. We'll have DRS open. We'll follow him to the inside. We'll be forced to the outside. No! Fake move by Joe, but it doesn't quite work. Cameron's still able to hold the position in the outside part of the track. Cameron's still leading. As caution comes up in sector 2. I think that's a spin from one of the Williams. In that section of the track, but Cameron, impressive defense, manages to keep Joe away and will still keep the lead in the Qatar sprint race.
Yeah, to be honest, I don't know where that came from because it looked like Joe was miles too far back, in my opinion, as last gen is making up a position. Was that on Jake? Or was he dropped back down? I think he's dropped back down. He was in front of Chaotic, no?
No, I think he's just managed to get back up to P9. I think he is managed to have a little bit of recovery in terms of the turn 1. So we watch Dasher and Ender Epic. It looks like this might be another fight going on between the two Ferraris. Of course, there's no team championship, it's all individuals, but you do still have these two drivers to sort of complicate things in a spin in the background going on. Alpha being removed from the train. Mad Dog will move up a position and will be chasing down the rest of that train to hopefully join in this race as we watch again Cameron and Joe on the start-finish lines. Joe moving towards the outside will hope to stick around the outside of Cameron, sticking with him wheel to wheel, but just pushed a little bit wide, pushed off the racing line. Joe forced a little bit too far inside, a little bit of a squeeze from Cameron, and Cameron will maintain P1 in this contest. Because once more, Finn having a little bit of a spin out during this, still getting to grips with the circuit. So these two drivers again will be looking to have another matchup and another fight as they enter this caution sector. Finn will have to move out towards the side, let these two drivers through. Does so very nicely. It's good obeying of the blue flags, as the rest of the train will be looking to follow behind. And Repping and Dasher, they've swapped places. Good move from Dasher to get ahead. And I don't think we quite saw, due to the fact they're so locked in on this race at the front of the field. And we'll be starting to look at this another chance on lap 7, moving on to 8 for Joe to overtake and get into P1 into the slipstream. Opens up the DRS. Cameron's been so good at defending this turn 1 position throughout this race. It has only been that first lap that has gone wrong. Joe moving to the inside, and there we go. Finally, Cameron usurped in this race once more. Joe up into P1.
Yeah, to be honest, those last few laps could have even just been practice runs for Joe. It's sort of where you know where you're gonna make the overtake here. You just want to see roughly how close you need to be to get it done, and there he is having it done. It's just about defending it for him now. But Cameron Searle has proved that he can make the overtake stick around here as well. So. Yeah, who knows? Are they going to be swapping each lap? Rick? I think we'll have at least one more swap. I think
maybe one more swap. I think Cameron just sort of waits it out here, maybe moving on to lap 9. Because the biggest thing that I've noticed is quite a lot for these guys. You can't get the overtake done before the start-finish line. So as long as I think if you're leading on lap 9. And as long as you have lap 10, I should say, and you have enough of a lead over your opponent, you should be going into this with the lead. But I think Cameron will be close enough to make this move early into the slipstream. DRS open. Does it happen before the start-finish line? I think not quite. Even then, with the 2/10 gap, is not quite enough. And now Joe, maybe arguably, is in the best position to win this race as long as he stays close to the gearbox of Cameron in P1.
Yeah, well, all pressure on him, because now it's sort of you cannot bottle Sector 3, because if you do, it's done, pretty much. I'm not expecting Cameron Searle to make any mistakes here. He's looked pretty much infallible, as has Joe. So it's just all about keeping as close as possible, making sure your Sector 3 is good, getting a good exit, although he is 6/10 back. Maybe he's trying to save up some ERS while Cameron is burning it, who knows? But it's, well, ERS shows 100 and 76 for Joe, so God knows, but all I know is all of that ERS is going to be going out the window on this penultimate lap, coming on to the final lap.
Yeah, it's going to be thrown absolutely out the window going down the start-finish straight. Cameron will be using it to defend. Enough. Joe will be using it to just absolutely send it and try and take the lead going into the final lap. And that gap, I think, might be a little bit too far. How confident is Joe in terms of making this move on the outside? He's managed to do it previously. He's moved down to the inside. Cameron will cut that off and will maintain the lead, but goes a little bit wide. Joe, the door is open, but not quite open enough, as Cameron's able to just about shut it on this final lap. Cameron able to maintain the lead. Where are the other overtake zones on the rest of this track in this final lap for Joe to look for? Penalties being doled out left, right, and center, but none for these two. They've managed to keep it clean. No penalties for each. Joe right on that gearbox. We're looking to move down the inside. Again, Cameron will not let him through, will be able to defend and has enough pace going through these corners to keep Joe at bay. It is a 3/10 gap now. It will drop back down for Joe. Cameron, maybe the last chance for Joe is moving into this last home stretch for these two. They are in Sector 3. They will be moving through this fast section of the track. Joe behind by 4/10. I think that's a little bit too far as we get to the final corner. Cameron, I think, is just far enough ahead. The sprint race win will be going the way of the runner-up at the moment in the championship. Joe can't do enough. Cameron wins.
Well, as it turns out, we were correct in our prediction of one more swap as Dasher comes home in P3 with Ender Epic and Reese Hands rounding out the top 5 there. But very interesting battle up at the front, and it just goes to show that there's only really one overtaking spot, and you have to get really creative if you are going to try anywhere else.
I mean, the creativity almost worked for Joe during that Sector 2, managing to force a little bit of a tank slapper out from Cameron to move him out onto the green side of the track. But unfortunately, it wasn't enough of a gap for Joe to eventually get through and simply get past us on the line. Dorsey managing to keep Shrimps for head. Just behind, it's James, 8 seconds behind, Finn a lap behind. There we go, the camera moves back to the sprint race winner, Cameron Searle, P1, and takes advantage in terms of the points this weekend.
Driver of the day, Chaotic, how lovely.
And he started out the qualifying attempts. It's the one with driver of the day, according to the game. An interesting sprint race as we look towards the full main Grand Prix. I mean, like you said, just after the race, people are going to have to start getting creative in terms of overtakes on this track. It's really going to test Joe in terms of his overtaking abilities. If Cameron is going to try and sort of lead from the front, that start-finish straight is also going to be the main area for everyone to make the most of. DRS, ERS, absolutely send it, try and get on the inside, because the outside, it worked once for Joe, and even then it was early in the race when Cameron realized, oh, I don't really have to fully fight this. I can let him get past, I'll just follow him behind, recharge my ERS, and I'll make the overtake again later. He did so, and he managed to win the entire race.
Yeah, I mean, realistically, if I want to refer it to a different type of motorsport, you could even look at it like a bit of a super speedway oval. Stick yourself on the back of the car in front. So long as you're close enough going into turn 1, you'll probably be able to get that overlap inside. If not, then outside you can try it. It might work, it might not, but as we've seen, you can get it done before the corner even, so it just goes to show that that is a good overtaking opportunity. And yeah, I think for anywhere else, maybe the double right, where it's like sort of 90 degrees. I think that looked like it would have potential, but either way, it's going to be much more difficult.
Well, it was amazing work from Cameron during the sprint race to keep Joe at bay. I tell you what, who's also doing some amazing work. It is the charity that BUSR is supporting throughout the season, Special Effect. Take a look at this video.
Nobody likes being left out. That's why Special Effect are helping people with physical disabilities to play video games. But this isn't just about having fun. The gaming setups we create are personalised, so people can play to the very best of their abilities. And that opens the door to inclusion and independence, confidence and creativity. Help us level the playing field and create more magical gaming moments. Because it's everyone's turn to play.
An amazing cause, and we are so proud to be supporting them throughout the season of BUSR. Now, the real-life Grand Prix is tomorrow, but unfortunately enough, BUSR, we don't have to wait for that long in terms of getting results towards the championship in round 7. We have the Grand Prix today. Coming up right next, Cameron leading from P1 after a sprint race victory. Joe, the championship leader, just behind. Oh, it's getting spicy in this championship race, Jason, and Qatar is only going to compound that.
Yeah, exactly. I'm going to be honest. I thought you said, unfortunately, it's going to be right
unfortunately
now for,
for Joe, to be fair. Unfortunately for Joe. I think he would have loved for this to be Cameron spinning off to the wall, and he gets a free set of points over him in terms of this sprint race. I don't know why it was 12. I can't remember the points for for the sprint race.
50 for
Is it 50
sprint? I don't know.
50 for the full Grand Prix.
10.
There we go.
10 points for P1 in a sprint race. 40 points for the feature, since they get split for the sprint. And points. Points all the way down to P15. Everyone's getting points so long as you finish. Congrats, everyone.
Just don't crash out. Don't crash out, and you get a participation point at least. But today, crashing hasn't been an issue for the front runner. It has just been an issue going into this turn one. I wonder if this will be replicated. A few drivers starting on the softs. The drivers at the back looking to make up a few positions on their rivals, but mostly it is hard to start off this race.
I'm going to be honest, I wasn't expecting to see all 3 tyres here. I'm not quite sure what the bottom 3 drivers are thinking their strategy is going to be. I think maybe a 15 stop, but,
3 stop perhaps? It must be a case of them wanting to just try and blast up the field a little bit before the first stops start coming in. So we'll have to see. We're going to have to look out for Dorsey so he doesn't fool me again with another jump start that we'll have to have a drive-through for. But we have the formation lap completed. Yeah, keep an eye out for me, mate. Be much appreciated. Here we go. It is 5 red lights. BUSR Qatar Grand Prix starts once more here. Sprint race is done. There are no jump starts. Cameron moving into the lead, unaffected by anyone behind. Joe up front. Turn 1. It seems to be clean so far. Yes, we've gone through that. So we move into turns 2 and 3. The drivers are much more aware of the contact they can have with each other this time around. The soft runners be looking to make moves. Last gen Newt moving up to P8 off this start. But still, Cameron Searle building a 4/10 gap, and there seems to be a small instance going on behind. A few bits and pieces possibly flying everywhere at the back of the grid. But there you go. It's changed up 6 spots. 6 spots. That is one of the soft runners that we have today, starting off and immediately up. Let's take a look. Yeah, we have Finn and Shrimps for head behind on the soft tyres, but it's James. What a start to move up into P8 after just half of lap 1.
Yeah, well, did you see that double overtake? It was divebomb.com, but certainly was an opportunistic move, and it was pulled off very cleanly. So that if there's an overtake of the week, that potentially could be it. And it wasn't at turn 1, which is insane. But this is at turn 1. Is Joe going to go for the move? He's going to try it. They're going to be there's contact, and we're both off. We are both off, both championship contenders. Joe, don't join like that. Cameron.
5-second penalty given to Joe by the virtual stewards. I'm not sure if any of the race officials are really going to be complaining about that, given...
We're going to be seeing that.
We are going to be seeing that. Joe and Cameron, we're going to be seeing them in the pit lane later. Another collision happening behind, I think. That is Jacan spinning out and taking Joe back even further. Cameron moving up. This is ridiculous. Ridiculous stuff in the Qatar Grand Prix.
Did I not say it? But, I mean, to be honest, I thought they were both going to bide their time a little bit more than blowing it up on lap 2. But I guess now for Joe, it's get as close to Cameron Searle as possible. And for Cameron, it's just try and grab as many points back as possible. I'm not sure if either of them have damage. I mean, Joe being in 2 collisions, it would be impressive if he got away without damage, but doesn't look like he's come in.
No, Alpha moving into the lead, and with all that chaos, plenty of time for Cameron to get back into this, though. With all that chaos, we could have a new race winner for this season. It's just been the Cameron and Joe show throughout this season, as Joe does move past Jacans to start this bounce-back race to try and return to the top order. But after it has been Cameron and Joe winning races all season, we have Alpha, Dasher, Reese Hands, Ender Epic all in positions to possibly win this race. Even going down to P7, last gen Newt, still in this train that is developing up front, is just from P8 onwards, with Chaotic about a second behind outside of DRS that has been enabled, that we could be seeing a new winner. But that is if Cameron is kept at bay, which, to be fair, after his Miami performance where he had to absolutely fly through people on soft tyres that were given to him by the AI, he was able to get back up to at least 6th, and that was with about 4 laps. He is going to be able to fly through these drivers as slowly but surely some of these start dying off. Joe is slowly approaching Cameron, but with Rage 5 seconds behind Cameron and Joe just on the back, is still quite a difference between the top two in the championship.
Yeah, the Rage 6 seconds behind Cameron, and also Rage probably 2/10 behind Rage. I don't know what's going on in Joe's head, but I'm assuming it's just go, go, go. As we see, he is now, well, there's a backwards Williams as well, as he is now dispatched of that train and trying to claw his way back up. Obviously, he's got that 5-second penalty. I'm not sure whether that's able to be revoked.
I'm not quite
obviously
sure.
not in the race, but
it's going to be
after the fact. Who knows?
It has to be something that he takes into consideration, at least in the pit lane. Unfortunately, you'll have to be waiting until after. But to be quite honest, looking at the collision, it's somewhat fair enough to get given that 5-second penalty. So I'm not sure how much Joe might be appealing it when it comes down to it. But looking at the top order, Alpha's managed to pull out a 1-second gap against his opponent Dasher behind. Reese Hands about 4/10 back. Slowly but surely, Alpha is starting to build a little bit of a gap, and Dasher does not have DRS open, so that gap was large enough during Sector 3 to ensure he has a little bit of padding between himself and Reese Hands, who's now overtaken Dasher into P2. This race is slowly but surely starting to spice up for these lead drivers ahead.
Yeah, it would be interesting what tyres Alpha are on, actually, because I know that some... Yeah, I was going to say, I know that some of them are on mediums. I was wondering if he was one of them, and that's a yes. So that tyre advantage going well, but it looks like it's James's tyres have probably fallen off by now since he got overtaken by last gen Newt in the last lap, and Cameron Searle is approaching very rapidly.
He knows your location, and he is approaching rapidly.
Absolutely.
But let's not... Joe is slowly but surely approaching Chaotic as well, the Aston Martin teammate. I like his being said in broadcast chat. I'm not sure how Joe is not going to serve that 5-second penalty, as we still have...
With glitches.
Well, we have glitches. We have, of course, there has to be a pit stop at some point during this race. So Joe is going to have to take it. This is a massive train. And we see Cameron Searle approaching the back of it. So all these drivers up ahead are going to be having to look in their non-existent rearview mirror. At least they got the wing mirrors to see the car rapidly approaching in. Alpha still with the 1-second lead over Reese Hands, who overtook Dasher. Only a couple of laps to go. Dasher trying to make his way back past into P2. Possibly these two might need to start working together a little bit to avoid Alpha pulling out an even larger gap as it is slowly building, but 10th at a time on these medium tyres. Reese Hand's also on the mediums, opting for them at the start over the hard tyres that is used by the majority of this grid.
It's been interesting so far. It seems like the tyres do matter a bit, but it's not exactly been completely dominant to be on a better tyre. I mean, obviously it's James making up 6 or whatever positions on the first lap, but he didn't actually get that far past that, and is now sort of falling back into the clutches. Obviously you've got a charging McLaren behind, and another charging McLaren here going for a move on the Alfa Romeo of Mad Dog. Ooh. What happened to Lance Stroll? We need to know.
Well, I did see on
screen. Well, Dasher went for RB Sands. We know that.
Dasher making past, and it is slowly but surely that medium tyre is being used well by Alfa. As that gap is starting to approach the 2-second mark, it does pass it. It's starting to be built as Dasher and Reese are starting to, well, fight each other for this one position. I think for the time being, you need to work together. Make sure that that gap doesn't get too far out of your reach. Cameron seems to be slowed down a little bit in terms of his rampage back by it's James. He's been stuck behind him for a few laps. As this train is still starting to develop. It does contain Cameron. He is at the back of this DRS train from P3 down to P8. Then it's a 5-second gap between Cameron and Chaotic. And then slowly but surely, Joe is closing in on the DRS of Chaotic. So we watch Cameron now starting to go into this final corner down to the home stretch, that when he was in P1, it was a key battleground between himself and Joe, not just in the championship, but in the sprint race. Right now, it's just not enough with the ERS and DRS to start making a move on It's James just in front. Joe does make the move on Chaotic, going down that same home straight and maintains it going through the last few corners. Now it is his turn to start approaching the back of this train as well. Alpha in front is leading with 2 seconds gap. But the problem is, the medium tyres, they're going to die off before these hard tyres. So this gap has to be widened quite a bit more for Alpha to make it a little bit more comfortable for him to make a pit stop and sort of have that overcut on the rest, the undercut, I should say, on the rest of the hard tyre runners.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of tyres dying off, Cameron Searle deciding not to wait for turn 1 because he sees that 1 second gap in front of It's James and goes, nah, we're not having that. As much as he doesn't want to be at the back of a DRS train, he certainly doesn't want to not be in the DRS as well, as It's James is going into the pits. Cameron Searle keeping his DRS for this lap, but it's going to be interesting to see the mechanics of the train, to be honest. Is it going to be easy to make your way through it? Normally, DRS trains are harder to get through than just normal operation, I guess, so it's going to be interesting, but somehow Cameron Searle on the back of the train has actually gained time as opposed to Joe, because that gap was at about 5 seconds. It's now at 6.5 over the past, 5 laps or so.
Getting past James has sort of opened up the circuit a little bit more for him. Now it has been closed off by being stuck behind Mad Dog at the second last position of this queue up ahead. Dasher and Ender Epic, they're having a little bit of a gap between themselves and Alpha as Alpha continues to grow this gap using these medium tyres very well. The hards will start, I reckon we're going to start approaching a little bit of a crossover between the hards and mediums.
Cameron, yeah, it feels like everyone's slowed down now.
So we can't see a VSC on track.
Well, Cameron definitely slowed down.
I don't think Alpha did as well. As Alpha, we have people moving into the pits.
But Cameron definitely slowed down because he was right up the chuff of Mad Dog. Speeding under VSC. Yeah, there's... Okay. Nice. Now the leaderboard's going all wacky. No, or is that just pit stop shenanigans?
I think pit stops under the invisible VSC.
Under invisible VSC? Do some people have it and some people don't?
This is a very good game. Thank you, EA.
I mean, there was no reason for a VSC. Nothing happened.
Yeah, that's an even bigger weird point for these drivers now.
So, what happening?
What's going on? What do we do? I'm not sure we do anything. This is Geek in the safety car. What buttons has he been pressing to cause this to happen?
He's pushed the big red button in race control that it says "Do not press."
No, that one's the full safety car one. It's sort of a smaller, sort of blue button that everyone sort of thinks, "What's this blue button do? Why is this blue button
water dispenser? Oh crap!"
Well, whatever has happened, Cameron has made the most of it, going up to P3 with some people with the VSE must have been taking the chance to what they thought was going to be a free pit stop.
Yeah, well, we've confirmed that there was a VSC, but apparently spectators can't see it. Cheers, EA. Thanks. Nice one.
That was very helpful. Very confusing for a second. I say a second, it was multiple seconds. What is Geek doing in that safety car? Made it so we can't see if there's been a virtual safety
invisible
car.
VSC boards. Cameron Searle going through on Reese Hands in exactly where I expected a secondary overtaking opportunity would be. I'm going to pat myself on the back. And admittedly, I've only done a few days of real-life marshalling, but I've never seen our invisible VSC boards. So, I don't know.
I think you're meant to not see them.
That's a good point. Good point. I've not been told about them either, so...
It's amazing how they're visible for some drivers and not the spectators. The last gen new, currently leading the Qatar Grand Prix after 11 laps. Been a little bit chaotic with the VSC. A little bit confusion there for us, but it has hopefully not been confusing for the rest of the cars on the track. Ender Epic seems to have served the drive-through penalty as well. That's dropped it down P7. Now heading onto the start-finish straight. Cameron Searle, after several laps, after the spin with Joe, could be moving back to the front of the Qatar Grand Prix if he's able to overtake his teammate going to turn one. Able to do so. Cameron back in on top of the Qatar Grand Prix.
I'm getting flashbacks from real life. From just a season ago. Seeing Cameron Searle getting into a crash and then just hammering it back up the field, obviously with pit stops. Don't know if he's in first, but he's obviously currently there. Our man on the inside in race control has also said no idea why VSC came out, so that's good.
Well, Cameron hasn't got any stops along with Joe, but Joe has to consider the 5 seconds that is going to be forced onto his start-finish time, which once again, I'll back up my opinion and say that most likely that 5 seconds was deserved after spinning out Cameron going into turn 1, just exiting.
Yeah, maybe. I admittedly have to see more angles to know, but looking at the times and who's stopped, what do we reckon? Cameron Searle currently sort of between Alpha and Mad Dog area. I don't actually know how much time you lose. Doesn't help. I
think that is a safe bet. Looking at the time differences, I reckon we are looking that down in between Mad Dog and Ender Epic at worst. If for some reason he doesn't turn in time and he has the extra 2 seconds or so, added on to his pit stop. So I think that's the lowest that he's going to go if he decides to pit now, lap 13. But the pit window for the hard tyres that he's currently on, that is much further along in the race. So he's going to be sitting around and racing on these hard tyres for a little bit longer, along with last gen Newt following behind. But Reese Hands definitely be looking to make a pit stop at least in the next 3, maybe 4 laps tops to get off the medium tyres and start to look towards finishing this race on the hards himself. Yeah. It's the medium to hard strategy or hard to medium strategy in terms of this Qatar Grand Prix.
I mean, I'm actually quite surprised that he didn't come in under VSC. Because it was, lap 11, lap 12? It seemed like about the perfect time to pit, actually. I'd expect Cameron in around maybe lap 18-ish. We've seen that from Reese Hands that you can go 13 laps, but who knows what's best, as it's James who gets past Ender Epic, and obviously having not pit yet, he's only served that DT. And James on the fresher hard tyres, as Reese Hands now coming into the pits. Good timing.
Getting rid of the mediums onto the hards. As just behind, Joe is also making a pit stop. Extra 5 seconds, unfortunately. We're going to have to wait. Of course, Drive to Survive. That is a good 30-second pit stop added on, but thankfully in the game, it is the standard 5 seconds being added on to his time in the pit lane, and be leaving just after his teammate Kartik drives past, but just before Rage, I believe. Not just before. Rage is moving into the pit lane. So Joe will be happily sitting in 11th. We'll have to make a charge in the next 15 laps or so to try and move up. And he'll be hunting for a second place finish, I would say, to maintain the 1-2 consistency between himself and Cameron. Cameron, though, still in these hard tyres for the 14th lap. I'd say, considering where everyone else is pitting, maybe the next 2 or 3 we'll see Cameron moving into the pit lane to make his first stop of today.
Yeah, I mean, I've no doubt that Joe knows better than I do, but it seems that slightly early, just before the halfway mark, you'd sort of expect to stay on those hards just past the halfway mark and bowl on the mediums so that you're not completely dying at the end. Maybe his tyre wear is actually quite good, who knows? Who knows what type of magic some of these drivers can produce, as we've got Jake and Ender coming into the pits as well. Very unlucky for Ender, actually getting that DT for speeding under VSC, as that has just completely shunted him down the order.
We've seen a fair bit of lack of luck from a lot of these drivers, unfortunately, this season. They'll be compounding what Ender Epic has. There we go, leaving the pit lane just behind Jacans, 2 tenths. Safely in front of Shrimps for Head, just coming down the start-finish straight. Cameron Sell up front, developing that lead up to a good 3.5 seconds. Dorsey being delivered another 3-second time penalty. Here's the little bit of a racing going on here between the 2 Aston Martins. 2 drivers in the dark green, the racing green of the Aston Martin team. Joe trying to chase down Chaotic to start this rampage up the field. Does make an interesting move going through that corner, but does make it ahead. Chaotic will be trying to stay with him, stay in touch, try and get a little bit of DRS and ERS going down to home straight, but the lead is starting to build for Joe. We know about 5 tenths, 6 tenths. That is going to be a safe gap, unfortunately. Chaotic will be behind Joe, managing to take the lead, and will be chasing down those ahead. And Cameron Sell does come out in P5 after the pit stops from everyone else. Lap 16, the mark to move on to the medium tyres for him, as we still have plenty of racing to do for the rest of these drivers.
No, I'm no narc, but did he cut across the pit exit line there? Is he allowed to do that? Maybe I am a narc for saying that.
Ooh.
Oh, I might have a little trawl of the rule book.
It's just an incident, man. It's just an incident.
Well, we'll see. But looking at it for Joe, actually, that gap's not done too badly considering he's had a 5-second penalty. It was, about 6.5 seconds before, and now it's 6.5 seconds plus about 2.5, where you'd expect it to be about +5. So Joe's clearly had a pretty good time of it on his first few laps on the mediums. We'll see whether Cameron can start to pull away now, or whether Joe is going to make the better of his clean air. As last gen Newt coming in. Is that our last pitter?
Makes sense. No, it is the last pit stop. So everyone's gone through one pit stop, and Dasher is the one leading. Of course, what has come with that is 7 laps older tyres. Cameron only pitting the last lap. Last gen Newt having a fair few other drivers to try and get through. And now he's got another problem. Joe right on the back with just a tenth between them. That is right on the gearbox from Joe, trying to make the move around the outside. There is no space there, Joe. Joe, again, will continue to follow last gen Newt round these corners. Through this hairpin, Joe looking to stay on the inside, get the hammer down and try and get through. Will be blocked out again by last gen Newt. Going to the next set of corners. Be a slightly more fast-paced from these two. Going through this section, Joe still remains just behind, keeping last gen Newt very, very humble in the McLaren. We head towards Sector 3 as we move into it now. Joe still just behind last gen Newt as we start to head towards the start-finish straight. We know about a 0.2 gap is what you need to make the overtake stick with DRS and ERS, and he will definitely have the DRS going into the Cameron Sell getting a fastest lap as we watch Joe trying to overtake his teammate going down the start-finish straight. This should be a simple move for Joe as just after the finish line, Joe gets it done into turn 1 and moves into P7. Has 3 seconds to chase down It's James, and then a further 7 to try and chase down Cameron, who's very far up the road.
Yeah, I think last gen Newt probably realised that wasn't a battle worth fighting, but Joe definitely having been impeded being behind him for the majority of the lap. That gap has firmly gone up, so he's going to have a lot more work to do to try and get as close as possible. I'm not sure the overtake's going to be... I'm not sure they're going to be close enough to have an actual battle again, unless something else happens, but for Joe it's just going to be get as far up as possible and hope that Cameron Sell has bad luck getting through everyone, but so far he's been quite good at that, as we are probably going to be seeing into turn 1 here next lap.
Yeah, this should be Mad Dog done and dusted for Cameron. Just behind last gen Newt, done a fantastic job defending against Joe, and now is just sticking on the gearbox again. It's been great driving from him. The 2 McLarens looking to make a move down into turn 1. Here goes last gen Newt. Cameron gets his move done. So does last gen Newt. Joe will have another headache to deal with again in overtaking last gen Newt. We held back even further as the gap between him and Cameron is starting to grow. And in fact, the gap between himself and Reese Hands in P5, that's starting to grow between Reese and Mad Dog as well. So just everything getting a lot harder for Joe to get the moves done as last gen Newt gets another move on this lap, trying to get through. It's James on the inside, a little bit of a contact from the 2. But last gen Newt does manage to get through, gets the move done, up into P6. James, looks like he's almost succumbing to Joe as well. Yes, does so. Moves off track a little bit. I think a little bit of a tight battle going on there between those two. We'll have to look at that later. But for now, Joe's up in P7. Last gen Newt in P6. It's James down to P8.
Yeah, looking like Joe was making a bit of an opportunistic move, seeing that It's James was going to be a bit off kilter, and managed to get that done. I'm not sure he's going to be quick enough, close enough to get past last gen into turn 1 here, so it's going to be probably another lap of being behind him, which is exactly what he doesn't want. And he's, unfortunately for him, by the looks of things, Finn's been disqualified for going the wrong way. That's unfortunate.
Has to pull onto the side of the track. Black flag being waved for him.
Yeah, probably just having tried to recover back to track the wrong way after a spin. Seen that a few times. It's unfortunate, but it's how the game works with the mini sectors. But as I was saying about Joe, he has come into this with an advantage. He probably obviously didn't want to use this as a drop round, but it's looking more and more likely that this is going to be his drop round.
So top of the order, Dasher has being closed down by Cameron. It was a 3-second gap, and it looks like it will be overtaking early. No need for the start-finish straight this time from Cameron. A little bit of a mistake from Dasher, but this time I don't think that Cameron has DRS. I think it has been given to Dasher. As we go down the start-finish straight, Dasher, don't think he'll be close enough to make the overtake into turn 1, but doesn't he stay close enough through the next few laps just to maintain that DRS. But Cameron taking the lead in the Grand Prix. Further down the order, Last Gen Newt making an overtake on Reese Hands. Both him and Joe are starting to move up this order, just slowly but surely over time. Drivers are starting to lose out on these two drivers who are just flying up the grid, flying up the order. Reese Hands stuck behind Last Gen Newt. Joe will be looking to try and make a move past. Not in these next few sections coming up, unless he can get very creative, as Cameron has, as a few drivers have done. Joe doesn't get the power down. We'll have to wait just another moment. Last Gen Newt starting to build a gap between himself and Reese Hands. Joe will need to make a move very, very soon if he wants to keep up with Last Gen Newt and use the pace that he has to continue to move up the grid, as he needs to do so in the next 8 laps, as Cameron will look to make sure that this Qatar Grand Prix ends just the same way as the sprint did, an elementary walk to the finish, as it was in front of Joe. Reese will maintain a little bit of a gap, but it won't be enough going into the start-finish straight. As I've said consistently, DRS, ERS, you stand no chance with a 1/10 gap between yourself and a title contender. Down the start-finish straight, Joe makes the move up into P4 and will be continuing to just try and chase after not only Last Gen Newt, but Alpha as well in P2.
Yeah, I think that 3-second time penalty for Alpha is going to be part of the calculations here, to be honest. I mean, Joe's obviously got to pull off some mega times, probably at least a second a lap quicker than Alpha to get up close enough to him for it to matter. But I think as far as we're all concerned here, Cameron Searle is now out of the picture. He's going to be driving off into the sunset if the sun was still up. It's all focused on how quickly can Joe sort of get up towards him. He's going to want to get past Last Gen Newt. Has something happened for Dash to retire?
Retires from the session?
Didn't see a yellow flag, but there is a suspicious yellow dot coming out here. Just as I said Cameron Searle was going to be going off into the sunset, there was a little yellow dot on the track in Sector 1. I believe that's a safety car.
He has moved into the pit lane, so we'll be grabbing a fresh set of, I'd say, time to the end. 7 laps, enough time for softs.
Alpha speeding in pit lane. Softs.
There we go, softs going
Softs. On. Yeah, everyone's got to come in, surely.
Surely, with the safety car is a free pit stop. Enough time towards the end to make an impact, and this is music to Joe's ears. As he's moving into the pit lane. He's actually overtaken Last Gen Newt. No, he hasn't. For a brief moment there on the timing screen for me, Joe was in front of last gen new, I think.
Just where the pit boxes were.
Yeah, it's just where the pit boxes were. I thought for a moment Cameron might have messed, unfortunately, with them stopping at the same time, it might have messed up the pit stops for him. But fortunately enough, for last gen new, he remains in the lead. But he will have to deal with Joe underneath the safety car being behind. Tell you what, he'll be a little bit nervous about this situation. It is Cameron who under the safety car might have the softs. Needs, like everyone else, there is another turn 1 incident that could be brewing. What if Alpha makes a dive down the inside? What if Mad Dog is moving around the outside? We go 3 wide into turn 1 and Cameron gets sandwiched in between them. He's taken off the racetrack. Joe flies through. The nightmare situations could be running through his head, but I think Cameron will still be focused on just getting the job done at this point.
I mean, I think Mad Dog would do well, because correct me if I'm wrong, he didn't pit.
He and Dasher pitted. He and Dasher pitted for softs just before the safety car came out. So they kind of lost out on the free pit stop, but they have still somehow sort of, at least Mad Dog has gained from it. Dasher, unfortunately, retiring from the session. But Mad Dog is I tell you what, Mad Dog, almost every single race, it's just been Monaco that he hasn't gotten a podium when I've been on the commentary desk. And that was because he was just in P4. And something ridiculous has happened to Mad Dog. Something ridiculously lucky has happened every single race. And I tell you what, this definitely comes under that Mad Dog luck umbrella. Being behind someone with 8 seconds of penalties, which, if unserved, can be challenged after the race. But Mad Dog, he could be in a very good situation again with me on the commentary desk after this safety car comes out.
So what we're saying is you're his lucky charm.
I think I am a bit of his lucky charm, yeah.
Well, it's interesting to think, and our head of streaming for today has given us a good point. Look at Cameron Sell's gears that he's in. The number is quite low. I think he's trying to burn fuel a bit.
I mean, we've been told that Qatar is a high burn circuit, but maybe he's just overcooked it a little bit in terms of the amount of fuel. Just wanting the extra few tenths with these softs on. Get yourself a fastest lap as well. They're so needed for the championship too. Being 52 points. Well, secure it.
Yeah, good point. Probably going to be more happening considering they're all on soft.
But 52 points for a win and a fastest lap, which I believe second place usually gets 40. It's just the fastest lap that brings it to 42. Well, so a 12-point gap being made up, plus the win in the sprint race, which I believe is just an extra point with second getting 9. That is the championship closed up.
Sprint format says safety cars in this lap. Sprint format says that a win in the feature is worth 40 points, whereas obviously in a normal race it would be worth 50. The points just divided down slightly differently. So it'd be a good 42 over Joe's currently would be getting 17. But obviously we've sort of got to count him as sort of P2 as opposed to that, as Cameron Searle, by the looks of things, has already gone. Not leaving anything to chance, as he's already got a 6/10 gap to Alpha. Unlikely that any moves are going to be able to be made on Cameron Searle into turn 1, but looking further back, there could be something. Reese Hands is actually getting closer to Joe.
Unfortunately, it's starting to realising that this gap was not quite there between the two drivers. Because there is a position swap, Endrepic getting ahead of Jacans further down. It's another just sort of melee between quite a few cars at the back of the grid, trying to get an extra few points for the championship. the top order might be just a little bit too far out of sight in terms of Cameron and Joe leading the championship. But I tell you what, behind it is just an equally massive fight for these drivers. Gain what points they can. A chaotic above It's James as well. It's James just falling down the order. The early soft strategy looked quite good for a little bit. I think he's let the tires die a little bit too much. There's Cameron already a 1.7 second lead over Alpha in second place. Last Gen Newt trying to chase down. That's quite a sandwich that Last Gen Newt's found himself in, rounding the final corner. Going down the start-finish straight. No DRS. This is pure slipstream from all of these drivers. Last Gen Newt looking to make a move down the outside of Mad Dog. Mad Dog drops down to P4 momentarily as we go into turn 1. Mad Dog does have the inside. Last Gen Newt fighting on the outside. Does have the inside moving into the turn number 3. And can he get the move done? Joe is very, very close behind these two drivers. Mad Dog moves towards the outside. And that is Last Gen View, and so is Joe. The two fighting immediately after almost a little bit of contact, I think, there between the two drivers. It looked like for a moment that one of them was going to spin out again. Joe getting into another incident. But Alpha remains in P2, but he's dropped back into a 3-second gap. Joe in P3, he'll be chasing down Alpha in the last 3 laps. Last Gen Newt and Mad Dog trying to have their own battle themselves in Ps 4 and 5. But Joe, the interesting point in the storyline of this championship will be him trying to chase down Alpha to make sure he gets that P2 on track. Make sure there is no doubt with these penalties pending over Alpha's head, whether those count or not, whether that'll go down to the stewards. But Joe will want to make sure that on track he is past Alpha for certain. Make sure he's in P2. Make sure this is just another P2 for the season. And Cameron is still just relying a little bit on those drop rounds early on in this season. Mad Dog trying to move around the outside. DRS has been enabled, so we'll be looking back towards that start-finish straight for any moves. Joe has an opportunity now. Get within that 1 second of Alpha. Get that start-finish straight. It needs to be done in the next 2 laps to close down that gap, to get it comfortable for him and make his way into second place. It has been an absolutely chaotic race around Qatar for most of these drivers. Cameron, it has definitely been a chaotic race, having to drop down to P6, I believe, at his lowest point after the spin with Joe, has made his way back up to the front with 3 laps remaining. He has got a 3-second lead. I would say it is just going to be a walk in the park for Cameron, unless he has some mysterious crash or AI moment as well that sends him into the pit lane. For Joe, the storyline is closing down the 5/10 to get within DRS. For the rest of these drivers, it is a battle to the end. Mad Dog 7/10 to Last Gen Newt. We're watching Reese Hands, who's just 3/10, the driver going wide there onto the start-finish straight. I think that was Reese Hands sort of dropping back momentarily, trying to make the move on Mad Dog. Decides to withdraw for the moment, realizing he doesn't quite have the distance to close down. But I tell you what, there is a Mercedes making a move, and it is the Mercedes of Dorsey on chicanes to move up into P10.
Mercedes making a move on a Red Bull, something we've not seen for a little while,
like last week in Las Vegas.
Well, don't worry about it. Who needs to remember things? But no, going back to that Joe double overtake, I thought at some point you were going to say through goes Hamilton. Very reminiscent. It's not Hamilton.
Joe. He's not Hamilton.
Yeah.
I can't use the line. More penalties coming in for Alpha. So it depends. There might be quite a few of those that stand. I mean, they are multiple warning penalties, so I'll that at least one set will stand now. So just Joe needing to remain within 3 seconds. The rest of them will be called into question, I'm sure, by Alpha, or he might just sort of go, yeah, fair enough. The 11th second was deserved. So we move on to the last lap of this race. Cameron into turn 1. He'll be running away with a 3-second gap, but behind the fights continue. Mad Dog into turn 1. Will try and make the move, but Last Gen keeps on the outside. This is a great battle between these two. Mad Dog unable to make the move stick. Last Gen maintaining P4 as we are on the last lap. Cameron at the end of Sector 1. The rest of the drivers trying to find the creative points of this track to get through and just get the extra points, get the podiums they want.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see if anyone's going to see a dive bomb opportunity in any of the more twisty sections of the track, as obviously the main overtaking opportunity has now gone past us. But no one's looking particularly close. I'd say you'd have to be within 1.5, 2 tenths. I mean, Joe is currently sniffing the Alpha Tauri, frankly. We'll see what he's going to do. I don't think he needs to make the overtake. Alpha's got a couple of seconds and a 5 second, but here comes
Joe
the line.
There we go. Joe will try and get this done on track, but someone who did get it done on track, Cameron Searle, wins in Qatar, and that is a vital moment in this championship. Alpha will be happily crossing the line. He finishes P2 on track, but Joe, with the penalties, moves up into P2. That is great damage limitation with the help of a safety car. There's still fights going on behind. Dorsey overtaking. It's James. No, it's James. Keeps the P10. And, well, P9. Dorsey back into P10. Last to finish and cross the line is Shrimps ahead. But a big moment in this championship. A big moment heading into Suzuka. Cameron wins the penultimate Grand Prix of the season with a win in Qatar.
Yeah, I'd love to see what that does to the point standings. I mean, does that even mean that Joe is going to have to drop this round? I mean, was it enough damage limitation wise? As my God, Cameron is levitating. That is not something you see every day. But yeah, interesting podium celebration from the McLaren driver. Clearly, they've made some new technology in Woking that I haven't seen yet.
I think they might be saving.
Yeah, that's thrown me off.
I think they're saving the real-life version when hopefully Lando wins next season. So that is a huge moment in this season. Like I said, as soon as Cameron crossed the line, that is big points drawn back in the race for the title. As all these drivers will be heading towards Suzuka, the grand finale. Joe, he might be just ahead. It's a much more complicated system with the drop rounds being included. So it's confusing for me to sort of keep track of things. I think Joe is still ahead in overall points. But of course, with the drop rounds, it gets more complicated with Joe having to drop a second place. Still a second place. And Cameron dropping just the DNF in Zandvoort, where he crashed out underneath a safety car. So this storyline will continue after a big win for Cameron. He doesn't crash out like I sort of suggested at the start of the broadcast that would sort of almost settle things for Joe in this season. But for now, we wait for the drivers to get out of the debriefing room. We'll be talking to the podium drivers after.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the points tallies here. What Joe came in with an 18-point lead. If my maths isn't terrible, no, that's 16. My maths is terrible. Quite embarrassing considering my qualifications in maths. But 16 points, 2 second places versus 2 firsts. That's not going to be 16 caught up. So pretty much looking at the drop rounds, it's all going to come down to the final rounds, because I don't think Joe can afford to drop a DNF if Cameron Searle gets anything better than a second, realistically, which sounds like a big ask, but let's be honest, it's Cameron. he's been getting a lot of better than P2s.
Yeah, when he has been finishing, I believe it has been P1 mostly. It's just the P6 in Miami that ruins that streak of being top of the timing sheets and top of the final race results. And that is the first time also on commentary that Joe has not won the Grand Prix. I'm sure he went into this race in Qatar sort of seeing me on the broadcast sheet and thinking, oh boy, another win for me. But today, unfortunately, it's just P2 on the road. Well, like I said, I think there'll be a small moment where we think Alpha did finish ahead on road, but I think with enough penalties, there's surely enough corner cuts and track limits to at least make a 3-second gap that he can't appeal, and that'll be the end. And he'll be dropping down, and Joe will be finishing P2.
Yeah, I think there's definitely going to be enough there, but be interesting to see what happens over the coming days in the steward's office, to be honest. Because who knows if anything's going to change due to the lap 2 collision that we've seen with Joe and Cameron. Obviously, we only had one camera angle of TV. Cams don't tend to do a very good job of showing you who actually could have done better. But, yeah, either way, Joe still technically gets P2 because of his drop rounds, and he's still going to want to finish ahead of Cameron Searle either way, so it doesn't really change much. Maybe adds a tiny bit more pressure on.
I believe we do have our top drivers lined up now in the waiting room, and I believe we've got Last Gen Newt in third place, who we'll be talking to first. Wait for a moment. Last Gen Newt.
Hello.
A big race for you. I mean, I think all this season you've been putting in some very good performances, and it's been these last 2 races that I think you've really cashed in on that potential.
Yeah, it's been really good. I think the pace these last 2 races have been really surprising because they're the ones I've done the least practice for. So I don't quite know what's going on there, but yeah, after the sprint race, I was not expecting a podium. The starting P10, I thought the top 3 were just going to drive away, but then Dasher had his issue, and then I don't know what happened between Cameron and Joe, but it helped.
You definitely did. It kept you in the fight, and you had a very good battle with Joe in between. I'm sure Cameron was very much appreciating you keeping him behind as a faux teammate in terms of this race. It is about individuals, but I'm sure he appreciated his papaya teammate keeping him behind a little bit. Take us through that sort of little mini battle you had with Joe just before that second safety car.
Well, I came out of the pits and I thought that he was just going to breeze past me because I was on cold tyres. But then he stuck behind me for quite a lot of the lap. And then when the tyres warmed up, I was able to keep up with him quite easily. So I don't know whether his tyre wear was limiting his pace, but I had a lot more pace than I was expecting, and I wasn't expecting to fight him for as long as I did.
Jason, any questions for our P3 finisher?
Well, less a question, but if you did less practice for this round, may I suggest no practice for the last round? It seems if you do...
Well, I think for this race, I did 1 short qualifying session, and that's it. So I think for Suzuka, I'm not even going to do that.
Time trial?
I might. I'll see how it goes, but
yeah, just dial it in 1 lap on soft.
It's a much harder circuit, so.
Don't worry about it. What's medium speed corners anyway?
Yeah.
Well, Last Gen, congratulations. I think we look forward to seeing you next week in Suzuka for our season finale. Congratulations today.
Thank you. Thank you.
And now I think, Jason, we welcome the man who got P2 overall in this race, Joe, incoming, current championship leader, or it might be a little bit more complicated now. Joe, I think there is a bit of an elephant in the room, and it's called spinning around Cameron. Take us through that incident, please.
To be honest, I haven't seen it. I was just having a look at it from Cameron's perspective just now, but I've not really had a proper sit down and look, so I have no idea what really happened, to be honest. So it will be interesting what the stewards rule, given the holes in the rule book with some space. I mean, Cameron should have been awarded a penalty in Monaco for his push to pass against Matty, but he wasn't. So there have been some interesting stewarding decisions made this season. So we'll have to see what happens. You never know. Yeah, but it was an odd incident. I mean, it was probably not it was bad because of the game physics, with kind of him getting hooked on my left front and then kind of spun round in front of me. So outside of the incident itself, it was exacerbated by the poor game quality, so to say. But I mean, it seemed to have no effect really. It mattered not. I still came second somehow after all that, and he still dominated, came first by about 5-6 seconds and fastest lap. So he's not extended. He's closed down the gap. I think I have no idea what it is now, to be honest. I think
it was 16 points at the start of today.
So he's gained 12, so it's 4.
He's somewhere single digit, yeah.
Oh no, he's 13 because sprint maths is stupid. Yes, no, he's gained 13, so he's 3 points behind now. So yeah, depending on stewarding outcomes, this could end up being my drop round. It's still my drop round, or is Brazil. Does
it even matter if it's your drop round or not?
Yeah, because I've not put it in a wall yet. It's my lowest scoring one.
You've been
how many
second
did you score in
place.
Brazil?
Yeah,
39, and this will be 39 if I'm P2.
So it doesn't
and
matter.
race result. Yeah, basically it doesn't matter.
Cool.
Unless I've been at Japan. But yeah, other than that, it doesn't matter.
Don't do that.
Yeah.
And you'll be alright.
Yeah.
the glory of the drop rounds. That safety car did sort of save you towards the end of the race, reset everything, gave you a chance to chase everyone down. But last gen Newt was a little bit of a thorn in your side throughout the race, not only after the safety car restart, but just after you both had a pit stop. He held you up quite a bit. It seems like the two papayas have been quite the counter to you this season with Cameron and Last Gen Newt. We asked Last Gen Newt about the battle. What's happening your side? Because he thinks it was a bit of tire degradation after you having to rampage through the grid. Take us through that sort of short battle on your side of things.
This before safety car, yeah?
I think there was one before the safety car and there was a slightly smaller one after that you guys had a bit of a duel.
Yeah, so I mean, before safety car, he was on tyres that were 2 or 3 laps fresher. So he didn't hold me up at all, actually. If anything, he was dragging me along. I think I was ahead of him for a lap. He was pretty clear that he was faster on the fresher tyres. The deg was pretty huge around here. And it's exacerbated on controller as well. So he was, if anything, helping me before the safety car with the DRS and the tow. And then after the safety car, it was 3 wide with Mad Dog. So that was an interesting one.
That was an insane overtake, because I was sort of watching Newt overtake Mad Dog and I thought, this is a good move from Newt. And then Jason did point out it was a bit of a through goes Hamilton moment as you suddenly came out of nowhere and took the both of them to move up the order. But Joe, if it's a drop round or not, I think it's still a somewhat decent result today after a little bit of a setback, moving back at the order with the not only one spin but the second after, and then the 5-second hold up that you had to deal with. Yeah.
Well, I've already been penalised for
I thought so as well.
Yeah.
By the look of it, I sort of instantly thought, oh, this is Joe messing up. By the looks of it, it was you messing up, but of course, we also only get one view. We don't have the replay blessing either. So my instant knee-jerk reaction might be wrong as well. Jason, any last notes for our P2 finisher?
Just don't crash in Japan.
Thank you. I'll try my best.
That is all.
Well, I mean, I have to beat him, which isn't going to happen. because he's in race trim, anywhere between half a second and a second a lap faster. So unless I put him in a wall,
just make sure it's an Aston Martin safety car then.
Is it Senna and Prost? Senna and Prost in Japan as well?
Tactical DNF.
We won't tell anyone.
Yeah. I'm sure there's nothing that could go wrong with that one,
eh? Well, congratulations today, Joe. A bit of a recovery drive required, but still a P2 finish.
Thank you.
And now, last of all, sprint race winner and main event winner, Cameron, closing down the gap in the championship as he joins us next in the interview. Cameron, a big day for you today in closing down that gap. I think I started off Joe's interview with this, but let's talk about the elephant in the room with you being spun on lap 2. I think we have to start with that as well. You, of course, recovered, but that must have been a little bit of an alarming moment for you.
Minor heart attack. I think it was all planned, because problem is when we're in the races and we just clear off, we never get shown on the comms. So we definitely just pre-planned it to get some TV time.
Of course.
No, it's a little bit scary, and I was driving angry for a few laps, but it worked out in the end.
Joe said it might have been some odd game physics. On your view of things, what was going on? I think you were slightly behind it, slightly ahead in the situation, and Joe just seemed to catch the back tire.
It just tagged the rear, and kind of with the game. Once you make contact, it's gone. But yeah, it was, I left him as much space as I could, and still got hit. So.
Jason, hello, Jason.
Hi, I'm here. I exist. I don't really have much to say.
Are you going to give him the same advice that you've given everyone? It's just
not crashing. Yeah.
It's a good piece of advice, to be fair.
Most of the time, I try to take that.
Let's not talk about Zandvoort then.
Or Monaco.
Or Monaco. But I don't really have many sort of points and questions. It seemed like the standard elementary race for you when you sort of managed to get into P1. You started running away with things. And not only that, but a sprint race as well. A good quali lap got you up front. You must have been proud with the quali lap at least.
Dude, that was mad. We know there's a slight weird thing with the game when it's on a sprint format for Qatar. The grip is about 0.3 faster than normal, but even so, that was perfect lap. I was not even going to try and improve. Normally, I do the 2 runs, but yeah, no, that was pull into the pit lane and retire level worthy.
Drop the mic.
Yeah.
I'm done.
Exactly.
After that, I do have my final question, actually.
There we go.
When F1 esports seat?
I'm not overly interested. They put way too many hours in, and I do not have that time or commitment.
Yeah,
Plus,
fair enough. You prefer to touch some grass.
Exactly, but I'm just off the back. But yeah, those guys, they're so consistent. This lap was 1 in a million. It's for them. It's every lap. So.
Well, I think for us in the commentary desk in BUSR, that's a 1 in a million lap that's worth celebrating and mic dropping. Cameron, P1 today in both races. Congratulations. Thanks for joining us on the desk.
Thank you very much, guys.
Well, Jason, Suzuka next week, the series finale. I'm sure you'll be very interested in the drama going into that between Cameron and Joe, the 2 championship contenders going into the final race of the season. What do you sort of predict happening as we head into the final race of the season?
Well, I'm certainly going to be seeing if they all heed my advice. But despite what the points look like, with Joe having, either a 3 or a 4 point lead, we think, somewhere around there at least.
Yeah.
I do reckon that Cameron may have the edge. It does seem like he tends to have the pace advantage. the majority of the time. So it will take something to take him down. He seems like a bit of a machine at the moment.
Yeah, both Joe and Cameron have run things this entire season. It's been one of them at any given race to take the victory or just take second. Joe has been very consistent with that result, but unfortunately, it might end up coming back to bite him in terms of just not quite having the gap over Cameron into this final race with the wins. But that will do for the Qatar Grand Prix. There's still the real life one tomorrow, but I think we've had enough drama for an entire weekend with two championship contenders crashing during the race. Thank you very much for joining us for another week of BUSR Round 8 coming up next Saturday in Suzuka. Thanks for joining.
See ya.